Good Sunday morning. Ahead on Face the State, new year, but some of the same big issues at the Ohio State House. Lawmakers get back to work this week. The Ohio House of Representatives could take a vote on whether to override Governor Mike DeWine's veto of the controversial transgender bill. Also, lawmakers are still working to make changes to the law voters passed in November, making recreational marijuana legal in Ohio. The Senate passed a measure. The House has yet to act. Plus, what the priorities are for the Republicans and Democrats in 2024. My guests today are Republican State Senator Andrew Brenner of Delaware and Democrat Senate Minority Leader Nikki Antonio of Lakewood. Now on Face the State. Thanks for joining us for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. An override vote on Governor Mike DeWine's veto of the controversial House Bill 68 could come as early as Wednesday. Ohio Speaker of the House, Jason Stephens, announced the House will go into session the afternoon of January 10th. A House Republican spokesperson told me it was changed from an if-needed session to a session day. So here's where things stand on the transgender health care and women's sports legislation. House Bill 68 has two components. The SAFE Act, or Save Adolescents from Experimentation Act, would ban gender-affirming care for transgender children. That includes performing gender reassignment surgery and prescribing cross-sex hormones or puberty-blocking drugs to a minor. The Save Women's Sports Act would block transgender athletes from participating in girls' and women's sports. Governor DeWine vetoed the bill on December 29th.
Ultimately, I believe this is about protecting human life. Many parents have told me that their child would not have survived, would be dead today, if they had not received the treatment they received.
The governor then detailed 3 rules he wants drafted. 1, a rule banning gender-affirming surgery for anyone under the age of 18. 2, a rule to require reporting of this type of medical care to relevant agencies as a way to establish data. And 3, a rule to ban pop-up clinics and make sure those who receive this care have access to counseling. Back on December 13th, the state Senate passed House Bill 68 by a vote of 24-8, with only 1 Republican voting no. The House of Representatives passed the bill the same night by a vote of 61-27. So, if the votes stay the same, both chambers have enough votes to override Governor DeWine's veto. It takes a 3/5 vote in the House and Senate to do that. Again, the House could take an override vote on Wednesday, but the Republican House spokesman told me the agenda won't be set until the House Rules and Reference Committee meets Tuesday morning. The House has to act first because the bill originated in the House. The next Senate session is scheduled for January 24th. Joining me now to discuss the big issues for the legislature in 2024 is Republican State Senator Andrew Brenner of Delaware. He represents District 19, which covers Delaware, Knox, Coshocton, and Holmes County. Senator, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for
inviting me. I really do appreciate your time. First of all, if the House overrides the governor's veto, does the Senate still have the votes to do the same?
I believe we do. We had an overwhelming amount of votes to pass the bill, and I believe that even if we have a couple members who may disagree and agree with the governor on not overriding him, I think we've got enough votes to override the governor on this.
You heard him make the argument that he talked to a lot of parents who said that their children might not be here today. They might have, died by suicide without that care. Do you think that that argument is swaying anyone who did vote yes before?
I don't know that it is. I sat through 8 hours of testimony, mostly opposition testimony to the bill, and I asked the doctors, where's the scientific evidence that proves that this is reducing suicides and improving depression? I have yet to receive that evidence. And I'm, asking for clinical studies that prove what they were doing is effective and working. Yes, there were a lot of passionate people, and I've got to say, I felt for everybody who testified in that committee. All these kids, all these families. It is clearly an emotional thing. It is a thing that, you don't want to wish this on anybody. You don't want to wish that they have to go through this. But I think that the science and everything is there to back up what we're looking to do, which is to override the governor.
But what about the parents who say that this is just taking the decisions out of their hands that they and their children and their healthcare providers are making?
Well, I would agree that if there were science backing up what they're doing, I would probably be voting differently. However, I have not seen the evidence that backs it up, nor have my colleagues who voted for the bill. I believe that an override is appropriate.
As we mentioned there at the top of the show, the governor is proposing administrative rules following his veto. Any chance that those could be taken up in the legislature in lieu of a veto override?
I don't think so. I think at this point, the House is looking to potentially pass their veto override next week. If they meet and they pass it, the Senate is, as you pointed out, going to be in on the 24th of January. I believe that's when we would take it up. The governor can proceed with the administrative rules. I sit actually also on JCAR that oversees those administrative rules. Many of the rules he's proposing are the exact same things that essentially we were trying to address in the bill. So there wasn't a lot of difference between what he's proposing and what was in the bill.
He was proposing, of course, prohibiting surgeries of any minor, but it would allow for the hormone therapy and that to continue. So there is kind of a big difference there.
There is a little bit. However, when you take a look at some of the data that came out of Sweden, which we took a look at, Sweden, which has been doing this for 50 years, just in 2022 reversed their decision for minors on hormone therapy and puberty blockers. So this is a country that has been working with, in the transgender surgeries and all of that for, decades. And they have reversed course. So I think the science is starting to back up staying away from minors. Not a problem if you're, over 18 and an adult and you've gone through, various therapies to try to address your whatever issues it may be, whether it's depression or other issues. But we believe that there just isn't enough data there to back it up for minors.
So it looks like it will be overridden.
I believe so.
Another big issue before the holiday break, of course, was legislation regarding issue 2, legalizing recreational marijuana here in the state. Let's talk about that for a minute. The Senate did pass a bill in December that, among other things, would allow medical marijuana dispensaries to sell marijuana immediately. The House put off the issue until this year. Can you give us any insight into how negotiations are going, perhaps between the two chambers and the two parties, on what the House might come forth with?
Well, we do know there was one member of the Ohio House, Representative Callender, who supported full legalization. I think he has been leading the charge on the House side of negotiations. President Huffman and the rest of our leadership team were proposing something similar to what Governor DeWine wanted here, which is we weren't going to overturn the will of the voters. We're going to say, okay, it's still legal, but we believe that there needed to be some thresholds put in there. We needed to put protections in for kids, protections in for businesses, protections in actually for people who may be working with machinery or things where it could be dangerous if somebody's high on marijuana. So we wanted to make sure that those things were taken care of. We also wanted to take a look at where the revenue was coming from on those taxes, make sure it went to helping law enforcement and helping people who need treatment. So I think those are the things that we passed. Really, we have to wait to see what the House does, and that's going to be up to Speaker Stevens and what his leadership team wants to do. Again, we know that Representative Callender wanted full legalization, and the bill that he introduced was quite similar to what was passed in November. We do believe that there were a lot of things that we needed to change, and I think that we will hopefully get something done in the coming next couple of months. Sooner than later.
And that would have to be reconciled, right?
Yes.
If the House makes its own changes to,
it would have to go to
its bill.
Yeah, it would have to go to conference committee most likely.
The House also overrode the governor's veto of the bill that would prohibit local governments from banning the sale of flavored tobacco products. Do you think the Senate will do the same on that?
I think there's a chance that the Senate would vote to override the governor on this, and this has to do with business decisions. So if you've got a small business that is selling flavored tobacco in Columbus, as an example, where they've just recently banned it, that business is going to be hurt because people will just go to the surrounding suburbs and other locations, and that's not good for business. If you're going to make this policy, it probably should be a statewide policy versus a hodgepodge local policy.
Yeah, why not do everything possible though to keep it out of the hands of kids?
I think that's appropriate, and I would agree with that.
Let's see. The next thing is that, when you look ahead now to 2024, we've focused on two of those issues a lot heading into the new year. What are you seeing as top priorities for Republicans heading into 2024?
Well, obviously this is a presidential election year, so there's going to be a lot of time dealing with that. But I know the Senate, we've been looking at things such as housing and affordability. We've got a special committee that's been reviewing that all over the state of Ohio. We're going to be, I believe, up in Cleveland next week with that committee. When you have property taxes that have gone up, assessed values that have gone up, that impacts, the working class, middle class. It impacts all levels. It's going to impact school funding. So that's something that I think we're going to take a look at and try to figure out, okay, if property taxes go up significantly, is that going to be something that we as a state need to take a look at to try to equalize it so that you don't have some districts that are causing senior citizens to have to leave their homes? So I think that is something that we're going to take up as a priority. We're going to make sure that the Department of Education and Workforce, which has been implemented, that is continuing to go along the way we want it to go along, which is to improve everything in that department, make sure it's working better for the state of Ohio and all of our schools and students. So that's a couple things that I think we're going to be working on in the coming weeks and months. And then obviously we're going to have to go back and deal with probably the marijuana issue at some point with the House.
You were one of a handful of state leaders who received swatting calls over the holidays. Fake 911 caller saying that there's an incident going on at your address and the police show up kind of in force. How disconcerting is that?
Very. We passed the bill a little over a year ago now, and the governor signed it into law in the end of the prior General Assembly. And myself and several of my colleagues, and obviously the Attorney General, were all swatted the day after Christmas. This was, I think, retaliation for that bill having been signed into law the year before. I feel like we need to make sure that we have the proper security in place to make sure that this doesn't happen to there, as well as schools. I met with some superintendents as well, and they're concerned because they're getting prank calls on this, and it can scare a lot of people, especially with the kind of shootings and other things that have happened in other parts of the country. You want to make sure everybody is secure and safe, but you also don't want something where somebody's trying to prank or even try to cause chaos, which is what I think they were trying to do in this particular case. So I think we need to make sure that we protect First Amendment rights and privacy, but we also need to make sure that the police have the tools that they need in order to go after the people who are breaking the law.
Are you reaching out also to congressional and U.S. Senate
yes,
senators here?
My congressman happens to be Jim Jordan, so I've reached out to his office, and we're going to be in communication on this to see, because I think this is something that may have to be addressed at the federal level, because if
We've
you've
seen
got
it
people,
across the country.
it's all over the country. Plus, we believe many of the calls are coming in from foreign countries. So that's something that the federal level is going to have to address.
Senator Brenner, thank you so much for your time today. I do appreciate your input on all these big issues as we head into this new year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Well, when we come back, we'll go over to the other side of the aisle and get Senate Minority Leader Nikki Antonio's take on the big issues for the 2024 legislature, talking the transgender health care and sports bill, recreational marijuana, and Democratic priorities when we come back. Welcome back to Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. Today we're focusing on the big issues for the state legislature in 2024. We heard from Republican Senator Andrew Brenner, and now I'd like to welcome Senate Minority Leader Nikki Antonio of Lakewood. She also represents District 23, which covers part of Cleveland and Parma. Senator, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
I appreciate your time. You came out strongly against House Bill 68 that would ban gender-affirming care for minors and ban transgender athletes from competing in girls' and women's sports. Do you think the governor's veto will be overridden?
Well, I hope not. Certainly, many of the things that the governor outlined in his rationale for why he vetoed the bill were things that I spoke to on the floor of the Senate in opposition to the bill. And so I strongly believe that the best way forward is to uphold parental rights and also to listen to the medical community. And I actually like what the governor outlined in terms of taking that one step further and saying we really need to look at the policies and procedures, but do that administratively. I think he was spot on.
So you're talking about the administrative rules that he's directing agencies to start developing right now. Do you think there's a chance that those could be looked at in lieu of an override vote? I know that you're in the minority party here, but that's what Republicans will be considering.
Again, that is certainly the conversations I want to have with my colleagues across the aisle, that consideration should be the alternative to an override of his veto.
And why do you feel so strongly against House Bill 68?
Well, look, there was a wonderful opinion article, an editorial that just came out in the Cincinnati Enquirer that said instead of driving people away from Ohio with intolerance, we should actually be welcoming people to Ohio through our example of tolerance and acceptance and welcoming all people. And so I feel very strongly that this bill just sends such a message to so many people, members of the LGBTQ community, but it sends a negative message to businesses, to small businesses, large businesses alike. Do you really want to do business in Ohio? Will you be able to supply the workforce if people of all stripes are not welcome here?
Thank you for your answers on that. I want to turn to the other big issue here that was really dominating heading into the holidays and now continues over into the new year, and that's the legalized recreational marijuana. The Senate did pass a measure pretty quickly after the issue 2 went into effect, waiting on the House to act. Can you give us any insight as to where the negotiations might stand between the parties and the chambers?
Well, I can tell you that there was a lot of discussion and negotiation in the Senate with my caucus and members of the majority caucus, really centering around my caucus. It was very important to Democrats that we continue to uphold the will of the people. And the people said they wanted home grow, they wanted access to recreational adult use marijuana. In some instances, it talked about being treated like alcohol, so we tried to be consistent. But the most important thing to us that was not in issue 2 was expungement. And so we were able to include into that piece of legislation automatic expungement for people who have these minor infractions of possession that now, because it's legal, would not be there. We also thought it was very important, and we also added to that piece of legislation immediate access so that we don't create that illicit market, right? By having access in the places where right now you can get the medical, to be able to go to a dispensary and also get the recreational.
Are there sticking points? Some of the lawmakers I've talked to seem to be along the lines of the taxable rate and then the revenue, how it would be dispersed. Is that what you're hearing too?
Well, that was one of the discussions we had in the Senate, and certainly I think it's worthy to continue that discussion with our colleagues in the House. I think we want to make sure, again, that we don't encourage an illicit market by getting too high and of a tax base outside of what our neighbors to the north have or any of the other states. And so we were mindful of that when we had the discussion, and I think it needs to continue.
I want to talk about the ban on, I should say that the House overrode the governor's veto of the bill that would prohibit local governments from banning the sale of flavored tobacco products. Do you expect the Senate to override that issue?
It's kind of confusing, isn't it? A ban on a ban to. Look, the bottom line is I am a strong proponent of local control, and I think we are a state that actually tells our communities we uphold local control, your ability to make those decisions in your local community the best for you. I continue to believe that that is the best way forward, and so I believe that the communities need to have the ability to ban if they want to.
When the Columbus's ban went into effect on the 1st, we talked to a smoke shop that said they were really going to be hurt by this,
Yeah.
that it could end up putting them out of business.
Yeah.
What about them?
Well, and that's it. I mean, again, we need in the legislature need to be able to take a look, a 2,000-foot look at what are we doing and how does it affect the economies and business community at the local level as well as throughout the state. This is one of those issues.
So what now do you see heading into 2024 as the key issues, the big priorities for the Democrats this year?
Well, one of the things that, look, everything we're going to be focusing on is looking through the lens of upholding and empowering working families, healthy and safe communities. We talked about HB 68 at the beginning. One of the things that our colleagues talked about was the safety of children, that was a concern for them. Well, if we're really concerned about the safety of children, we have a suite of bills that would also address gun safety, because right now, children, death of children, the highest level is gun violence. That is the #1 cause of death for children in America. So in the state of Ohio, we should be taking a look at that. We should make sure their parents can go to work by providing affordable and safe childcare. And we should be doing legislation, looking at legislation that really is going to keep them safe in their communities as well.
And one of the pieces of the gun legislation that you rolled out was about safe storage.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
safe storage. We picked things that have already been discussed in a bipartisan fashion in our state and across the country. Safe storage, people being able to get a tax benefit to locking up their weapons, things like that, yeah.
Leader Antonio, thank you so much for your time today. I hope we can do this again in the future as this second part of the General Assembly continues.
Well, thank you.
I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back with more on Face the State after this. The state's new distracted driving law appears to be paying off and saving lives. The Ohio State Highway Patrol says it has seen a decrease in distracted driving crashes and deaths since the law kicked in last year. It prohibits drivers from using or holding a phone while driving. Troopers say crashes decreased by 14% from 2022 to 23, from 271 to 228, and deaths went down by 20% from 35 to 28. The state's distracted driving law officially took effect in April of last year, but enforcement only began in October after a 6-month grace period to educate the driving public. OSHP says it's given about 3,500 tickets since enforcement began. Troopers say based on what they've seen, overall messaging of the law is working.
During that 6-month warning period, what we saw month to month was a decrease in the amount of warnings that the officers were issuing or that troopers were issuing to motorists on the roadway, which tells us that the law was, or the educational side of that law was working.
We have more detailed information on the fines you face if you violate the state's distracted driving law on 10tv.com. The Ohio Department of Transportation also reminds drivers if you need to use your phone at all while on the road, pull over to a safe location and park your car. Thanks for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. I'll see you next Sunday at 11:30.